Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power's Save Our Game. Donating at least 100,000 to Irish football via England goals this summer. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
A very good morning and you're welcome along to episode 2 of the Euro 2020 show here on Off the Ball. Shane Hannon with you for the next month, for the duration of the tournament. Every single weekday when there is a match on, we'll be with you on OTB Sports Radio, on the OTB Sports app, which you can download for free in the App Store or indeed the Play Store. And we're live streaming as well every single day. Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, at Off the Ball, all the usual places you will find us. It's day one. Book the outdoor pub, book off work, get the sticker book ready, and sit back and enjoy the next 31 days of action. Our OTB Sports Euro 2020 show is live with Paddy Power's Save Our Game, donating €10,000 to Irish football for every goal England scored at the Euros. Over the coming weeks, I'll be joined by regular guests Eamon Dunphy and Damien Delaney, and plenty of Euros legends and football insiders as we preview the upcoming matches. Spurs legend and England international Clive Allen and Paddy Power himself will be with us this morning on the show. I'll also be joined every single day by a different member of Team Off the Ball, and I'm delighted and privileged to be in the company of Donegal man, Team 33's football expert and football hipster, Enda Coll. Enda, good morning.
Shane Hannon, how are you?
Keeping well, Enda, keeping well. It's an exciting day. We've been waiting over a year for this and it's finally arrived. Are you as excited as I am?
I'm absolutely buzzing for it, to be honest. I can't wait to get going with this, the Euros, and to be honest, do you know what I'm more looking forward to? I'm more looking forward to the day that we get to preview the Ulster Championship on this show, because that's what people are more interested in, Shane, isn't it?
Get the jerseys on. Yeah, listen, I'm so glad to have GA, to have football, to have the Euros over the next few weeks. At least we have something to talk about. I listened to the Team 33 Euros preview episode on the drive up from Monaghan yesterday. I was telling Will about it yesterday. England are hyped to the gills for this tournament, as they usually are, but I guess given the quality in their squad, there's no surprise. But you're maybe not as, I guess, supportive and behind this England thing as some people. Is football coming home in your view, Enda?
No, look, I obviously want England to score loads of goals because that'll be good for Irish football with the Paddy Power thing that we're doing, but at the same time, if you think back to the Russia World Cup, why did that England side do good, or why did they at least perceive to why they were doing well? And that was because there was no hype behind the team. Nobody expected anything from them. The pressure was completely off them. And now the English media have fallen for the exact same trap that they fall for every single major tournament that they did for the Golden Generation. They think that they're going to win it. They're hyping up this team. They think they're the best thing since sliced bread, and that's just not the case. I think if you do look at this England squad, it's clearly a star-studded squad, loads of quality players in it. But I also think that there's a little bit of a cheerleader effect with it, that you look at Foden, you look at Grealish, you look at Mason Mount, Harry Kane, these names up front, and they're fantastic players, really good players. And then it lets you forget a little bit by the fact that they could be starting their first game with Calvin Phillips playing midfield or Tyrone Mings playing centre-back. And that's just not the squad that's going to win the Euros. And if you look at England's squad comparatively with other squads in the tournament, France, for example, who are going into this as strong favourites, have as good, if not better, an attack and a world-class defence and a world-class midfield. And I think that England are just so top-heavy at the minute that the way that international football is, you don't score many goals anyway. So I think most teams that have done well have been conservative teams. France were a conservative enough team at the World Cup. Portugal before that, at the last Euros, were a conservative team, and I think that you need the defence behind you in order to mount those attacks, and I just don't think that England have it. If you look at France's squad, they could be starting the tournament with 4 Champions League winners in defence, a World Cup winners throughout the team, Champions League winner this year playing in midfield in N'Golo Kante, multiple league winners in midfield as well, and England could be starting with Tyrone Mings, with Calvin Phillips, as I've mentioned already, and then you just go down the pecking order a little bit and they're just not as strong as other teams are.
Yeah, like Dan McDonald made the point on the football show last night, talking about the fact that England's tournament could be over before it even gets started, because there is a chance that in the last 16 they'll play one of the group of death, France or Germany or Portugal. One of the teams in England's group, and I know you closely follow Scottish football and particularly Celtic, but Scotland's chances at this year's Euros, I mean, can they get out of this group? Like, it's not the easiest of groups that they have, Croatia and the Czechs as well in that group, but the game against England, the Wembley, is going to be a cracker in the middle of Scotland's games. But Can they qualify from this group? They could maybe sneak one of those third places, perhaps.
I think they can. I think they can do one better than that. I think Scotland will finish probably runners-up in this group. I'm not sure about Croatia. You know, I think they did peak at the World Cup. I think some of the players that have moved on from them, Mandzukic, for example, was a key player for them at the World Cup. Perisic hasn't been playing as much as he would have liked to for Bayern Munich. And then Modric is just getting on an age. And if you look down the pecking order in that squad again, I just think Scotland are at the precipice of a really good squad compared to where Croatia are. Croatia are very much, they were on the peak, now they're on a downward slope, whereas Scotland are at the very, very beginning. They're probably at base camp, if you want to continue on the mountain analogies here. They've got a really good squad, a really smart manager who knows who has finally figured out how to get all the best players that they have into the team. And he's also added to the squad as well. He swapped Ollie McBurney out for Che Adams, which was one of the best transfers you're going to see in international football in terms of people moving to different nations. But I just think the way that he has the likes of Kieran Tierney playing, you know, Andy Robertson, they're two of the best players going into the tournament. Scott McTominay as well had a really good season for Manchester United. Defensively, they are a little bit weak in centre-back. They don't have a real good out-and-out centre-back. But going forward on that left-hand side and in midfield as well with John McGinn, Scott McTominay, with David Turnbull as well, and then going forward Che Adams and Nesbitt as well for Hibernian. I think he's going to be one of the surprise packages of the tournament.
You're a big fan of this Nesbitt guy.
I'm a big fan more of the fact that he's going in very much as an unknown quantity, and I compared him on Team 33 to Hal Robson-Kanu for Wales a couple of years ago. That's what I think Nesbitt is going to be like. He's very much an unknown quantity, and some of those players can come very in handy when it comes to these major tournaments. The fact that not many people have been watching him, he is a good player as well, so I think he's going to score a couple of goals here.
I can't wait to see how Scotland do, to be fair. We'll preview a few of the top games this weekend across the show this morning. Just want to remind you as well of the rolling All-Stars, my rolling All-Stars and team of the tournament. Of course, the tournament doesn't get underway until this evening. Turkey against Italy in Rome at 8 o'clock. But if we bring the team up on screen there, just to run through it quickly. Hugo Lloris had in goals. A back four then of Mario Fernandes for Russia, Brazilian-born fullback. Soyuncu for Turkey, the Leicester man, of course. Rafael Varane alongside him. And I've snuck Kieran Tierney in as a left-back for Scotland there, taking liberties with this team. Midfield, Memphis Depay for the Dutch. N'Golo Kante, of course, for the French. Kai Havertz of Germany and England's Phil Foden. And up front I have Burak Yilmaz of Turkey alongside Romelu Lukaku for Belgium. So a decent team. It's going to be a very, very busy weekend of football. I hope you don't have any plans. If you do, cancel them. I want to bring you a look now at some of the Paddy Power markets this weekend. See if anything takes your fancy. Have a look.
Well, joining me to look ahead to some of the action in the Euros over the weekend is Emmett O'Keefe, our football trader. Emmett, we've got Turkey and Italy kicking everything off. I do note that they've met 5 times since 1984 and both teams have scored in those 5 games. So what's your play in this head-to-head?
Yeah, that ties nicely into our tip here, which is Italy to win at both teams to score, which is a fairly attractive price. I think it should be an interesting game. We've seen a lot of money for Italy in the outright market. They've shortened in from 12 to 1 in some places into as short as 8 to 1. And Turkey have also been kind of well fancied as an outsider. I would have impressed the betting public when scoring 4 goals against the Netherlands in a recent World Cup qualifier. But I can actually see Italy edging a fairly exciting game here. So Italy to win, both teams to score is the tip.
Okay, so Italy to win, both teams to score. Now, obviously, a first goal scorer, the goal scorer markets are very popular. So anything worth to play there?
Yeah, I think Nicola Barella would be worth a small bet to score first, or to score first if you're feeling braver, or to score any time if you're looking for a slightly safer bet. But he'd be potentially one of the breakout players of the tournament. He's a midfielder for Inter Milan, but playing for the national side, he gets forward quite a lot and has quite a good goal scoring record for the Azzurri. So Nicola Barella to score first, or to score any time.
Okay, interesting thoughts. Turkey against Italy kicks off at 8 o'clock this Friday. Our Emmett thinks Italy can win, both teams to score, and Nicolo Barella to score either first or any time. Take your pick.
Yeah, a reminder that our OTB Sports Euro 2020 show is live with Paddy Power's Save Our Game, donating €10,000 to Irish football for every goal England scored at the Euros. Delighted now to be joined on the line by the Spurs legend and former England international Clive Allen, and indeed Paddy Power himself. Morning, lads.
Very good morning. How are you getting on?
Keeping well, lads, keeping well. Clive, I might start with you. This is very exciting. This is the day we've been waiting for so long. And I guess, Enda, my colleague here beside me, has been talking about the hype around England, around this team. Are you as excited as most people are about this English team? Do you think there's slightly less or slightly more arrogance heading into this tournament?
I think we're always excited about going into any tournament. We're always going to win any tournament, whether it be a European Championship, whether it be a World Cup. But this is an opportunity for this group of players. I do believe that. I think there's undoubtedly an advantage playing the games at Wembley, or the majority of games at Wembley. And I think it is an exciting group. If defensively we can be strong, I think we've got a very, very good chance.
Is that a worry for you, Clive, the defensive situation? I know Harry Maguire and Jordan Henderson are fitness doubts. Tyrone Mings, as we've been discussing, is a potential starter in that England defence. Is that a weakness? Is the goalkeeper situation a weakness as well?
Yeah, I think when you look at England teams of past, the strength they've had with a really solid defence, goalkeeper who is very, very consistent. I think that would be one of the areas for me where you just have a little bit of doubt, because in tournament play there are games where you certainly you've got to not concede goals. You've got to stay very tight, and if you can keep clean sheets, you've got a great opportunity of progressing. And I think that's if there's a fear for me, that would be it for England.
Clive, can I just ask you, while we're on the goalkeeper situation, Jordan Pickford is obviously the #1 goalkeeper, or he was for England for a number of years now, and he played the World Cup, and I think he surprised a lot of people at how well he stepped up for England when it came to it, because his form for Everton hasn't been the greatest over the last couple of years. But going into this tournament, Dean Henderson, the fact that he was starting for the team that finished second in the Premier League, does that give him the edge going into this, or would you stick with the continuity of Jordan Pickford in nets?
Well, I just think, knowing Gareth Southgate, he will stick with Pickford because of his experience, because of what he's been through with England. Not necessarily Everton. His Everton form has been inconsistent. Henderson did well playing for Manchester United. There was no doubt about that. I think he is the one who is threatening Pickford's place, but I do think Pickford, with his experience, will be the one that starts.
Paddy, are you along the same lines? Are you all aboard the England hype train for this tournament as well? I mean, a lot has been spoken about the young talent in that team, and when you look at the spine of the team, it's quite exceptional, but inexperienced when it comes to major tournaments. How do you think they'll fare at this one?
I'd be optimistic, but I think Clive's spot on in what he highlighted, that like defensively it wouldn't be that. I mean, probably fine group wise, but when they get up against like a France or one of the proper big teams, you'd worry about them defensively, I think. But hopefully should bang in plenty of goals, and not just because of the promotion, but generally they seem to be set up to be a really good attacking team. But I think they're going to need to be, because I actually think their group is awful. I think it's an awful group for them, because Croatia obviously are brilliant in midfield, particularly. They're really solid. They're going to be hard to break down. The Czechs beat them recently enough, and Scotland, that's as close you're going to get to a derby. So it's actually a really much tougher group, I think, than people are giving credit for. So starting against Croatia as well, if they don't get a win there, then that game could easily has draw written all over it, I think. If that ends up a draw, the pressure really ramps up. And we know what the media are like in the UK, and we know how much, I mean, they almost begging for the team to flop, and so in a really, really weird way, it's happened tournament in, tournament out all the time. So that pressure is going to be really interesting to see how that plays out at home. Now, home advantage is going to be key if they can get that far in the tournament where it really matters. But I really hope they bang in a few goals early, and if they can be solid at the back, they have a real chance. I mean, they were joint favourites to win the tournament, which I think is probably unrealistic. Let's be honest, it's a bit unrealistic to expect them to win the tournament. They obviously are on the short list, but there's a few teams I prefer ahead of them to go all the way, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to chat around England and Scotland in their group, and we'll talk around some of the other games ahead this weekend as well, and get your predictions, of course, ahead of the tournament. Clive, can I just ask you about Gareth Southgate? I know back in 2018, wasn't it, the sales of waistcoats in M&S went up 35%. The support around Gareth Southgate was absolutely huge of that World Cup in Russia. John Giles was speaking on Off the Ball last night, and he was saying, I must be honest, not a great fan of his. Think he's a good lad and his PR is excellent. Does Gareth Southgate get the credit you think he deserves as England manager?
I don't think he does. I think he's been very brave in respect of bringing these young talents through, giving them their opportunity at international level. And I think that's been something that perhaps England managers of past haven't done. They haven't been brave enough. I think Gareth's been very brave, and I think he's got a group of young players who will go into this tournament. I think with no fear. When you look at the attitudes of players like Declan Rice, who is really a magnificent player in that holding midfield position. You've got Mason Mount, you've got Phil Foden, you've got so much talent, that young talent, that I think when you go into a tournament, because of their lack of experience at that sort of event, there's no fear there. And I think that could really bode well for England and Gareth Southgate. I think Gareth's been very brave in that respect.
I mean, we talked about the players in form in that England squad, and look, Phil Foden, Mason Mount and a number of others, Declan Rice you mentioned, all in excellent form. But if you look at the likes of Marcus Rashford, Raheem Sterling, maybe not in their best form, the form that we know they can produce towards the second half of last season, is that a worry? Will that give them maybe more motivation to perform at this tournament, or do you think that kind of doesn't bode well for how they might perform?
No, I think again that can be used to England's advantage, because certainly when you see the form of Foden, Mason Mount, that players like Marcus Rashford, yes, not been in their best form for Manchester United, but he will know, given the opportunity, he's got to take that chance. He's got to perform to the best of his ability. And I think there's great competition in the squad. I think there's something. I do believe at this moment in time that Gareth's not 100% in terms of his starting 11. And I think he was going to have to juggle the squad. There will be changes as it unfolds. Talking about England and where they finish in the group, I hope they finish second, because if they don't, obviously we know the situation as to who they could possibly play in the knockout stages. So in terms of actually winning the group, is not necessarily the ultimate. I think that, you know, they progressed really well in the World Cup because of where they finished. The route through to that position opened up for them. And I think it's going to be very tactical coming into the last few group games.
Clive, can I just ask you, in terms of this squad, obviously a lot's been made of it, and going forward, it's a very, very attacking, very quality-driven squad, and very young as well. But compared to the golden generation, which it is named, it was a much more balanced squad back then. You know, you had Rio Ferdinand, Ashley Cole, John Terry, some of the best defenders at the world at that point. And then the midfield was Lampard, Gerrard, Scholes. Is there a feeling that this squad is better than the golden generation, or do you feel that they're on the precipice of becoming the next golden generation? And I suppose, do you think Gareth Southgate is good enough as a manager to guide them towards the success that they can have?
I think it's a really good question. I think it is a squad that has tremendous potential. I think with certainly on the attacking front, the way that we can we on both sides can be very dangerous. I think from the flanks, you've got a centre forward who's a goal machine in Harry Kane. As I say, you've got Declan Rice. Jordan Henderson will be a miss just purely because of the position he plays. I think the experience that he would bring, if he's not going to be able to start or play a number of games, that then responsibility is going to fall on Declan Rice. I think he's capable, but again, we've got to see him produce that at the highest level. I think the 3-4 right backs that were picked, they're versatile in terms of the roles that they can play. Obviously, Cole Walker's played as a right-sided centre half. Reece James has. So I think there's versatility. There's an expectancy about this group, and I think that's the excitement of it. You know, it could all go very, very flat, but I believe if they produce the ability and the performances that they're capable of, that then could take England a long way in this championship. And
fullbacks obviously have become such a major part of any game plan, especially in today's football. The fullbacks do a lot of the heavy lifting. One thing that I found interesting, I suppose it only becomes clear with hindsight in the squad selection, was that Aaron Wan-Bissaka wasn't selected for the squad, and a lot was made about the 4 right backs, and he wasn't one of them. But I suppose now with Trent getting injured, with question marks over Harry Maguire, his fitness, maybe playing 3 at the back, do you think that Gareth might have been more clever in his selection of right back, that Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he's more defensively minded, whereas if you look at the fullbacks, every fullback that he's taken from the left and right are all wing backs, are all suited to playing as an attacking threat as opposed to being more defensively minded? Do you think Gareth might regret not having more defensively minded players in that defence because they are so top heavy at this point?
Well, I think he had great luxury, certainly in the right back position, and he would have gone over every eventuality in terms of who was going to play at right wing back, who was going to play as a right back if you play with a back 4, who was going to play as a right-sided centre half if you play with a 3. So he would have looked at every one of those eventualities, looked at the players that he will put in those positions, and 4 right backs was a big call. I thought that was his biggest call in terms of naming those players in the squad. I don't think he necessarily needed 4 because their versatility, as I said earlier, was so evident. And for me, I would have gone Reece James, Walker. I'm surprised that Trippier, who had a fantastic season at Atletico Madrid, there was no doubt about that, can play at left back. So maybe he's just got in there as the versatility of playing as a right back or left back for Gareth, rather than as a wing back, which he did at Atletico. So again, I think he's got so many options with those 4 right backs that he'll be happy. He knows exactly what and how he's going to deploy them, and we're very strong in that department.
Paddy, you mentioned you weren't too optimistic about England's chances of winning the tournament, but like when you look at the teams in contention, I mean, France, everyone and their granny really are backing France to win this tournament. The Belgians, of course, everyone knows the strength and depth of their squad. Spain have had a few COVID outbreaks in their squad, but yet are still a really, really talented team. And the Italians maybe haven't been spoken about as much, but their record in recent years under Roberto Mancini has been second to none. So who do you think will go all the way?
I think there's a load of unknowns in this tournament, and one of the weird things about it is that it's obviously spread across the whole of Europe. So the home advantage thing is weird. It's almost a double whammy for some teams, the home advantage, because other teams in their group have to travel like 5 hours in some ways, and across time zones and that to get to the matches. For example, Spain will be playing at home in Sevilla, where there's it's going to be roasting hot, and some of the teams in their group are going to have to come fly all the way across Europe, across a couple of time zones, and play in the heat and that. So that's going to be a massive double whammy of a home advantage for teams like Spain and Italy to a certain degree, and England not so much in the group stages, but the home advantage will come into play for them. But I think in racing terms, right, in horse racing terms, you'd say France won the last competition, the last World Cup, like on the bridle, like without being properly tested at all. I mean, they pretty much coasted through the whole tournament and won handy. Now, Giroud has been replaced by Benzema, which I think is probably a plus, despite Real Madrid not having it. That's why I think Benzema is a plus coming into that squad, and I think that Jesus, just when you look at their team, like if you write it down in front of yourself, you're going, wow, okay, he's good, yeah, he's pretty good, yeah, he's not bad, yeah, Kante, yeah, he's all right. Do you know what I mean? You go through the team, it is a pretty awesome team. So I know they're in a hard group and everything, but I'd expect them to come through that group, and that might stand to them actually getting to the harder knockout games, and they've had a couple of tough games in the group already, and I think France are going to be really hard to beat. I know they're favourites. I'm not going to get any pats in the back for tipping up the favourites, but I do think France are going to be very, very hard to beat.
From a top goal scorer sense, and this is always a difficult one to predict, and I know Harry Kane and Romelu Lukaku seem to be the ones everyone is going with, but then you have a couple of French guys, you have Mbappe and Benzema, who you mentioned. Who do you fancy in this one? It's quite an interesting. Like Memphis Depay is another who's scored a few goals in qualifying. Cristiano Ronaldo has to be in contention as well, but it's always an interesting one to call. And also, the other thing you have to remember is, I think statistically, I probably should know this rather than think this, but I think statistically, the Golden Boot winner is almost always the penalty taker. So you got to bear that in mind, that there may be a few penalties, especially when it gets cagey or whatever. So, and they could be really important. Like remember Harry Kane the last time, I'm sure every goal he scored nearly was a penalty. But so you got to take that into account. So I was thinking Benzema just out of pure because I fancy France, but then I'm not sure he's going to take the penalties. I think probably Mbappe might take the penalties. So he's probably not the best shout ever. So Lukaku's favourite for it. You got to think he's going to be able to bully the size of him, and that he's so strong that Belgium will probably, they're good attacking teams, they'll probably bully a couple of the weaker teams in the group and score a good few goals in the groups. And then he's a penalty taker as well. And he's the main man. He's the Harry Kane of Belgium, isn't he? So he's the guy who's going to score most of their goals. So I think it's quite obvious, but he's the guy. Now, one of our traders, Jason Murphy, I'm going to completely plagiarise his research and selections. He tipped up 100-1 each way goal scorer playing for the Ukraine, Malinovsky, who I've never heard of before, but anyway, but he's apparently, there's a chance he might be taking the penalties ahead of Lomachenko's, and if that's the case, then he'd be a huge price to 100-1, but I can't claim any credit over that, even if it comes in. That's complete plagiarism, but I think Lukaku and Benzema might too. Clive, Paddy mentioned Harry Kane there, and like I think he scored in all 8 of England's qualification games. He's 12 goals in total. Like he's in the shop window here, let's be honest, and turns 28 next month. If he was going to move, you would suggest perhaps now is the time. I mean, what are the rumblings around Tottenham Hotspur? Do you expect that this will be, I guess, him putting himself in the shop window for a move, beyond the tournament?
I think everybody knows of Harry Kane. They know of his outstanding goal-scoring record over the number of years now for Spurs. Obviously, he's made it clear that he would like to leave the club. Even in this current climate, I think it would take an extraordinary amount of money to buy him out of Spurs and the contract that he has at the moment. He's been to the World Cup. He's been the Golden Boot winner. I think I'm right in saying that normally the Golden Boot winner is not the winner of the tournament or doesn't play for the winning team. So I think on this occasion, Harry Kane would relinquish winning the Golden Boot for England to win this European Championships. I think there's a number of talented strikers. Mbappe, obviously, I think without a doubt, if he a man of his age and what he's already done, won a World Cup, been an unbelievable player for France. An outsider for me would be Yilmaz at the Turkish international, played in France with Lille, who won the Ligue 1 this season. He will lead the line for Turkey, who I think are going to be a sort of a dark horse for the competition. So Lukaku, because of his penalty taking and because there's no doubt that Belgium, with the talent they have, will create him chances. He's been in great form for Inter this season. So there's a lot of contenders. It's going to be a very, very difficult one to find the winner. Harry Kane would love to be the Golden Boot winner. There's no doubt about that. I think, unfortunately, we'll leave Spurs come the end of these championships. But I think he'd relinquish all of that for England to win the Euros this summer.
I'm delighted you said Yilmaz because he's in my pre-tournament All-Stars team of the tournament. So you've confirmed I am a football man, Clive. I know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. Like Enda, who you fancying in the Golden Boot stakes here? There's some serious names, and like even Alvaro Morata, Mark Lawrence said Antoine Griezmann the other day. Damien Delaney yesterday was tipping up Ciro Immobile. So there's lots of names floating around. Yeah,
you kind of have to look at it in several different ways because, like Paddy was saying, it's usually always the penalty taker, and like Clive was saying, it's rarely the people who actually win the tournament have the top goal scorer, and I'd get behind both of those opinions, but I think it's going to be Antoine Griezmann. I know it's on paper I think Lukaku is probably the rightful favourite for this because of the manner of their group stages and the fact that he is Belgium's main attacking threat, but Antoine Griezmann actually does take the penalties for France, depending on Karim Benzema and what the powers may be now that he's back in the squad. But Griezmann is their set piece taker, and he is very good for France as well, in comparison to where the role that he plays for Barcelona isn't really a goal scoring role, it's more of a goal creating role, especially with Lionel Messi there. But for France, he's very much a goal scorer, and I think he will be a fantastic player at this tournament. The difference between him and Lukaku is that Griezmann's playing against Germany, he's playing against Portugal, and then playing potentially against maybe England in the last 16, depending on how things fall. So he will have a more difficult route to the Golden Boot, but I think that because he's on penalties and because he's on free kicks as well, I think he has a very good chance of getting the Golden Boot for this.
Yeah, good shout. England, Croatia, lads. Let's preview some of the games we have to look forward to this weekend. We might as well start with England since we're on them. Sunday, 2:00, Wembley. Clive, it's a repeat of the 2018 World Cup semi-final. These teams know each other fairly well. Croatia were fairly brutal, let's be honest, in the Nations League. They're in a bit of a rebuilding phase. They've had a few retirements after that 2018 World Cup. Mario Mandzukic among them, Rakitic another, I think. It's a bit of a, I guess again, that these teams are familiar with each other. That kind of adds a little bit of spice, especially when it's a major tournament.
Oh, no doubt, history between the teams, and obviously Croatia had the better of it in the World Cup. I think for England, it's a tough start. It's a difficult game. It's a game that they can afford to lose. I think that again is all part of tournament football, that you cannot afford to lose that first game. I think England are capable of winning this one this time around. Obviously, you know, they have the midfield general, for me, one of the best midfield players at the competition in Luka Modric. He's still captain of the side. He's the one who's instrumental in everything that's good in Croatian football. So, you know, it's not an easy start for Gareth's team.
Just when you were talking about England there, and it just struck me that I guess one of the things in their favour is a strength and depth and versatile players. Like when I think of Bukayo Saka, he's someone who's played, you know, left back, out wide, in the middle. He's played in a number of different positions for Arsenal, and England seem to have players like that in their squad. How important is that, Clive, in terms of a tournament? I know the squad has been extended as well to 26 from 23, but You'd imagine the team that wins this tournament will have the team with the most versatile players.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think that is one of the reasons that Gareth has selected the players that he has. He knows that they're capable of playing certainly different systems and in different roles. They're not just purely a right back or purely a left winger. And I think that's going to be invaluable, especially as the tournament unfolds. You're coming up against different teams and systems which you're going to have to adapt to. Obviously, if your system that suits your players is working and you're winning, you continue with it. But I think it's going to be vitally important, and the squads are going to be really tested, and that's why you have to say that France, with literally 2 players in every position of world-class ability, that they're rightfully favourites. But you know that the opportunities are there for a coach who maybe just is a little bit different, who's inventive in terms of the way he uses his players, and that's going to be important. I think Gareth's trying to give himself the opportunity of that with the selections and the versatility of his players.
Paddy, the action gets underway tonight in Group A, Italy against Turkey in Rome from 8 o'clock. A lot of interest in this game, given that it's the opening game of the tournament, of course. But like, when you look at this one, it's actually a fairly decent fixture. Italy, 25-game unbeaten run. Mancini's done serious things with them. And they're a team in form. And look, we spoke yesterday about the fact that they've come in slightly under the radar, perhaps. And then the Turks are no pushover either. Second in their qualifying group behind France. Only 2 points behind them. They took 4 points off them as well in that group. And better defensively than they have been maybe in previous tournaments. So how do you see this one going? Because getting off the mark early in any of these groups is going to be crucial.
I'd be massive. And I think I just read a stat there this morning that I think the opening fixture, the last time the opening fixture was won by 2 or more goals, or more than 2 goals, was in 1980 or something. So they're notoriously cagey. Italy also massively stereotypically based on no stats, except I just think this about the Italians. They always seem to start the tournament a little bit dodgily or something, and then they build into it. They've certainly done that at least once in the past. So in my head, they always do it. But so they mightn't be fully wound up, if you like, for the first game. So not that they're vulnerable, but I could see it being pretty cagey. Turkey, like you said, they just don't concede goals. They only conceded 2 goals in their last million games or something. But they really don't concede goals. So both teams are obviously very strong defensively. Both have really good recent records. They're vying for top spot in that group. Both will probably qualify from the group, I think. And I think it's got draw written all over. I think 1-1, something like that. It's a 14-5 for draw. I think there's worse bets out there.
Yeah, should be a decent game, that one. There's some other quality fixtures across the weekend as well. Wales getting their tournament underway on Sunday afternoon, so that's going to be a decent game as well when Wales take on Switzerland. Sorry, it's tomorrow, in fact, in Baku. 2 o'clock start for that one. Enda, the Welsh, I mean, 2016 was just immense for them. You mentioned Hal Robson-Kanu earlier. And Switzerland have a lot of travelling to do in their groups. They're actually the team that travel the most miles across the group stages. Of course, it won't affect them too much for the opening game, but they have some defensive frailties as well. If Wales could get a result here tomorrow, that would get them off to an absolute flyer.
I don't think they will, though. I think we're looking at 2 teams that are almost counter opposites when it comes to the way that they're set up at the minute, because Switzerland are really functional. They've been building something for the last couple of years, and this group of players have been playing together for a long time, and they know the system as well. They play a 3-4-3 more often than not, and they know how to do it. The only issue with Switzerland at the minute is they're very reliant on Granit Xhaka, and we know what he's like when it comes to his discipline. So I think maybe him to get booked wouldn't be the worst shout for this. But when it comes to Wales, they're very dysfunctional at the minute. I was looking at their previous 4 fixtures. They didn't play the same formation in any of them, and maybe that's to keep people guessing. Maybe that's because they don't know what their best starting lineup is. Throw in the issues with the actual manager of the team, and then just the quality of the squad has declined over the last couple of years. I know Ethan Ampadu, he's a really up-and-coming star a couple of years ago. It didn't really work out for him this year at Sheffield United. Aaron Ramsey, again, not the player that he used to be a couple of years ago for Arsenal. I know he was playing the odd time for Juventus, but he certainly wasn't a key player. But Gareth Bale, again, over-reliant on Gareth Bale and his goals because they don't have an out-and-out striker. They're playing Harry Wilson more often than not as a false 9 or the number 9. So he's not an out-and-out striker. They've got a lot of talent there, but I think if you look at the way that the 2 sides set up, the way that the Swiss side set up with 3-4-3, they're packing the midfield. They're more cautious. They don't really have an out-and-out striker either. They've got a couple of players who can chime in with goals, but they don't have an out-and-out number 9. So I think the relative strength of the Wales midfield compared to the Swiss overall team, I think the Welsh could struggle in this game.
Yeah, and Wales are in that group with Italy and Turkey as well, so that's not the easiest of groups, Group A, to get out of, for sure. Clive, and mentioned Gareth Bale there. I know he scored a hat-trick for Spurs towards the back end of the Premier League season in decent form. He only scored a couple of goals, I think, for Wales in qualifying, but we all remember that lovely free kick against Slovakia from Euro 2016. There were some serious moments of quality from him in that tournament. It's a big tournament for him, and it's a big tournament for Wales. Do you think they can get out of this very tough group?
Yeah, I think they can, because the experience they had from the World Cup, I think that they come into it, they're very, very patriotic. There's nothing more than Gareth Bale likes than playing for his country, representing Wales. And when you have a player who, even at this level, can make the difference, Gareth Bale's that player. I think Ramsey's had an indifferent season in Italy, and he, again, playing for his country with great pride. I think the first game is going to be absolutely vital to Wales. It's a game, again, they cannot afford to lose. It's a game that they can win, albeit, I think, just by the odd goal. And that odd goal might be the quality of Gareth Bale that can make the difference. They are so patriotic about playing for their country. They played way beyond themselves in the World Cup. No one can deny that. But from that, they will have gained great confidence coming into the next tournament, which is obviously a Euros that is a difficult group to get out of, but one that I think they will. I think they'll progress to the knockout stages.
It's an interesting shout for sure. Another one of the games that really catches my eye this weekend is the Netherlands against Ukraine. That's Sunday evening at 8 p.m, that fixture. So it's a bit of an interesting one, this Group C. It's probably the hipster group, as we called it yesterday. It's a tough one to call, I think. That's an 8 o'clock start in Amsterdam on Sunday night. But for you, Paddy, we spoke to Damien Delaney about the Dutch yesterday and wasn't full of confidence for what they can do, and you know, what essentially said that he doesn't think they'll get out of this group. And taking on this team, you know, in the first game is not an easy way to start for them. Ukraine are a dangerous outfit.
Yeah, and funny, I think this is like it is an upset. You look at the odds, it definitely will be an upset. I think the Netherlands, they're in a bit of doldrums at the moment, and she's saying they're not going to get out of the group is a bold statement, but I wouldn't fancy them to go far in the tournament. I'm not sure they're going to win the group. Actually, I think Ukraine are a decent shout to win the group. They look to be just humming nicely. They're just really coming to themselves nicely, and they seem to have a good setup there. And they're 9-2 to win this match, and I think that's really tempting because it's like 4.5 to 1, and they'll get the Netherlands. As I said, I just couldn't fancy them at all to fight their way out of a paper bag at the moment. So I think Ukraine they've got a huge chance here. I think they're going to win the group, and to win the group they probably have to beat the Netherlands. So yeah, why not? Let's start with a win for them there.
Of course, the man in charge of the Dutch, Clive, is Frank de Boer, and you know, he had that infamous spell in charge of your former club Crystal Palace in 2017, and we spoke about him a little yesterday. But when he even has his brother Ronald slagging him off the week before the tournament, you'd start to question him as a manager. But from your memories and from talking to people maybe at Crystal Palace as well, would you worry for this Netherlands team with Frank in charge?
Actually not, because I think that this is the Dutch. This is what you get with them. They seem to implode when they go to major competitions with an undoubtedly talented squad that they have. I think that the start for them is going to be vitally important because they're at home in Amsterdam. It is a really difficult game, but if they could come through this one, the opening tie, I think that the confidence will grow massively. There's a lot of ability in that Dutch squad. Depay's had a decent season. He scores goals, and I think that you know, they're a team that I think everybody's expecting to blow up, but I'm not so sure that will be the case with the Dutch this time around. And you know, Frank's, I think, a very strong character. You've got to be in charge of this Dutch squad, and he will. I think he'll enjoy the challenge, and I do think that Holland will progress as well.
Will O'Callaghan got a bit of a slagging off yesterday on the episode 1 of the Euro 2020 show by choosing Italy as his dark horse for the tournament, which is an interesting place to put Italy considering the quality of their team. But Enda, if I had to push you for a dark horse, like, funnily enough, the European Championships are a tournament where you can get surprise wins. You've Greece in 04, you've Denmark in 92, and even solid runs like we mentioned Wales in 2016, and other teams have got deep into tournaments that they perhaps wouldn't have been expected to. But if you had to pick a dark horse for this one, who would you go for?
Well, again, I think it depends on what you're characterising as a dark horse. If it's the dark horse to win the tournament, I think, Denmark are almost everyone's dark horse, so it's hard to label them as a dark horse. But I think Sweden will surprise a lot of teams at this tournament. I think the way that Spain have prepped with, the COVID situation is far from ideal. Luis Enrique is obviously a fantastic manager, but that will undoubtedly affect them. Then you're looking at that group, and I think Sweden are the second best. And the fact that Spain are in such disarray at the minute, Sweden can top that group, maybe come up against the third best side and go far in this tournament. I think they've got a really talented squad. And again, I've mentioned it on Team 33. Jordan Larsson, Henrik Larsson's son, 15 goals for Spartak Moscow so far this year, and he's a really good talent. Like watch him just burst onto the scene and burn a couple of players. He's got really good pace. He's a really good finisher as well. He's a really intelligent player for his age. So I don't want to hype him up too much, but he's going to be the next Henrik Larsson, and I think Sweden are going to top that group. And I do think they will progress maybe to the quarterfinals at least. Interesting.
I want someone to give me, Paddy, a really left field shout. Someone tell me North Macedonia or Finland are going to make a semi-final here. What's your dark horse shout?
Well, is there a plate for the teams that get knocked out in the first round now? I think Turkey. They got the semis. Didn't they have the semi the last tournament, and then they're in the Italian group. We're saying there's a chance of them at least getting a result in the first game. It looks like they might come through that group if they do, and then who knows, because they're really solid defensively. So maybe Turkey could be one that could go quite far. And you kind of hope they don't, because I don't think they're going to be sexy scoring goals. It'd be like Greece when they won it. Just like, God, here we go. Now, it was grand when it was Ireland doing it, I guess, back in some of our earlier tournaments. But yeah, I think Turkey could boringly just get through by drawing matches and just not getting beat.
Yeah, Turkey's an interesting one because they got to the last four in Euro 2008 as far as I can remember, and the World Cup of course finished third in South Korea, Japan in 2002, and Sinal Gunyas, their current manager, was the manager in charge back then as well, so he's come back for a second spell in charge. So they're an interesting team. Clive, for you, if you had to throw a dart on the board and pick a dark horse for this tournament, who would you opt for?
I'm going for Russia because just where they're playing their games, I think they've got a very good opportunity of getting into the knockout stages. I don't think anybody's really thinking that they're going to go far. But if there's a surprise team for me in this European Championships, it's Russia.
Yeah, they got to the quarterfinals, of course, of the Russian World Cup in 2018 on home soil and beat the Scots 4-0 in qualifying, so they have a decent bit of quality. Lads, in terms of player of the tournament or player you're most looking forward to seeing, a lot of people have picked out, I guess, N'Golo Kante is one obvious one, and in terms of young players, Phil Foden. Enda, which players are you most excited to see? We always have tournaments where you remember a tournament for a player. Wasn't it the 2014 World Cup when James Rodriguez killed all round him and performed so well? So who do you think is going to tear up Europe this summer?
There are multiple players that I think could be very good at this tournament. I suppose you always kind of want to look for a younger player. I think Yuri Tillemans, I know he's been excellent for Leicester and everyone knows who he is, but I think these are the major tournaments that people really step up to that next level and really cement themselves as world-class stars. Kylian Mbappe did it at the World Cup. I think he'll take another stride towards the best player in the world at the minute during this. And Jordan Larsson, as I said, I think he'll be excellent for Sweden. I think if he gets starting, I think he will be a player to watch. And I'm really looking forward to see how Kieran Tierney gets on at a major tournament, because he's one of my favourite players in the Premier League. He was one of my favourite Celtic players. I think he's got that leadership ability that this could even earn him a move towards a bigger club than even Arsenal are at the minute. So I think Kieran Tierney would be one of my favourite players to watch at this tournament, so I'll be hoping he has a good tournament and doesn't get injured early on.
I like Teemu Pukki as well in this one for Finland. Like 9 goals in 9 qualifying games, 26 goals in the championship for Norwich last season. I know they're in a tough group, it's their first major tournament, but they have Russia, Denmark and Belgium in that group B. You know, and look, we mentioned Lukaku earlier. In terms of easy groups, that's about as easy a group as you can get, albeit with an asterisk beside it. So we could bang in a few goals in that group. Lukaku. For you, Paddy, in terms of players you're most looking forward to watching in these games?
I wanted to be like the best player to be like either Rice or Grealish, just to completely drive us bananas over here, you know. But I do think, like Mbappe is the one I want to see him do a Maradona on it, because I always think PSG is it's just a bit of a sham, not a sham, but like you don't get to see. Do you know what I mean? It's only Champions League the odd time you get to see them properly. I know that this year they didn't win the league, but you know generally it's not. It's like he's not normally not tested week in week out. We know he's amazing, but I just love to see him really stamp his class in this tournament and as I say, make it a one-man show, and then just us to go like, wow, okay, this fella, he's still young, and he is the new Messi, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned Grealish and Rice. There was a great one on Twitter yesterday. You don't know if you saw it. They were the two players picked out to play darts with the journalists, I think, as is tradition for the England squad at the Euros. And Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent saying those are two players, of course, well used to 180s. So all credit to Dan McDonnell for that one on Twitter, it has to be said. For you, Clive, in terms of players to watch at this tournament, players you're most excited to see, who are you looking out for? That's for you, Clive, if you had a couple of picks.
The gents have mentioned Kylian Mbappe. I want to see Phil Foden show his undoubted ability that we've seen in the Premier League on the international stage. I think he's a wonderful talent. He's a player that could light up the tournament, along with Grealish as well. I'm going for the young English boys. Plays, I think, regularly in the games. He could light up the tournament. But for me, the outstanding talent and the one that I think everybody will be talking about the world after this tournament is Phil Foden.
Phil Foden, I love it. Lads, listen, it's been great to talk to you this morning. All we have time for Clive Allen and Paddy Power. Thanks for all that this morning. And listen, lads, enjoy the tournament over the next number of weeks, and we'll check in again, no doubt, throughout the tournament. So enjoy.
Thanks, Will.
Listen, Enda, before I let you go, myself, Ger and Nathan have been tasked with picking predictions for this tournament. So for the duration of the tournament, we'll pick 3 games per show, essentially. See who ends up in the lead. We have to win, lose or draw, choose. So for the 3 games this weekend, we'll get the graphic up on screen for this as well to show you which games we're looking at. So we've gone for Italy against Turkey, which is of course the first game of the tournament tonight from 8 p.m. Nathan's gone for a draw. I've opted also for a draw, and Ger for a draw in that game. We've all gone for a draw for that one. Wales against Switzerland. Nathan has opted for the Swiss, as has Ger. I'm going for a draw. I'm quite optimistic about the Welsh and getting something out of that game perhaps in that one. And England against Croatia. Nathan has gone for the draw in that one, so for England not to get underway with a win, whereas myself and Ger think the English will win that first game. So Nathan's gone for a 25-1 treble there, myself and Ger 17 and 12-1 respectively. Who do you fancy in those 3 games specifically, Enda?
Yeah, I think you should being very conservative on the first game. I think Italy are going to win that very comfortably. I know Turkey, people are right up Turkey and think they're going to do quite good at this tournament, or better than expected, but I think that Italy side is so much talent in it, and they're well coached, and I think they'll win that game. In terms of the Wales game, I fancy the Swiss as well. The only thing I forgot to mention in that game is that because the Swiss are playing 3-4-3, that could open up so much space for Gareth Bale down the right wing. So that's the only upside in that. So but I do think Switzerland will win that, and then I think England will beat Croatia on the opening night. I
can't wait. It's all getting underway from 8 p.m. this evening, so get the sticker books out, get the Euro 2020 preview magazines ready, and listen, enjoy the next number of weeks. And it's been a pleasure. Thanks a million.
Shane, cheers.
If you missed any of that episode 2 of the Euro 2020 show, the full podcast will be up very shortly. That's on the OTB Sports app, and indeed on otbsports.com. You can also watch it back on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Off The Ball. We'll also be sure to have plenty of clips, and the podcast posted at Off The Ball on Twitter and Instagram. Myself on Twitter at ShaneHannon01. I'll be back on Monday morning from 11 a.m. We'll have a couple of top guests as well. Tony Cascarino and John Aldridge are due to join us on Monday morning for that one, and Owen Sheehan will be with me as well straight after OTB AM. Scotland get their Group D campaign actually underway on Monday afternoon against the Czech Republic. Loads of great Euros content to come over the weekend across Off The Ball as well, including OTB Football Saturday tomorrow. That's Dan McDonald, Johnny Ward and Stephen Elliott alongside John Duggan. The show is on air from 1 to 5, Football Saturday from 3 to 5, and Joe Malloy brings you OTB Sunday from 1 to 7 p.m. with plenty of Euros updates and analysis. Also England, of course, in action on Sunday against the Croats at Wembley from 2 o'clock. So same time, same place on Monday morning. We'll speak to you then. Have a good one.
Football on Off The Ball
with Paddy Power's Save Our Game, donating at least 100,000 to Irish football via England goals this summer. Gamble responsibly. GamblingCare.ie.